Hi, welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton from theketonis.com, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we have a doctor in the house, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check with a trusted medical professional about your personal medical concerns. Hello. This is Kim Howerton on Keto Life Support, and welcome. It is now December, can you believe it? And today, Dr. Ken Berry and I are coming to you with a discussion of stress, both holiday applicable and non-holiday applicable, with some practical tips on stress and how to deal with it. And then at about the 35-minute mark, we go into a live Q&A. Yes, that's right, live. So we record some of these episodes during a live Facebook Live. That's circular. During a Facebook Live. I'll say it that way. And we record these on Wednesday. If you want more information on how to join in on the live and potentially have a chance to get your question answered, join us in our Facebook group, Keto Life Support. And the link can be found for that at ketolifesupport.com if you can't find the Facebook group in the Facebook search. So we'll be discussing stress and then diving into a few Q&A questions, mostly around carnivore, some blood sugar stuff. We also talk about the ever-present questions about pooping. Okay, guys, looking forward to it, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Stress is a topic that is often overlooked. Like, people will go keto and then they'll be really upset because everything isn't perfect in terms of their weight loss or, their health. And my first question is often, how's your stress level? Do you run into this a lot?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And over the holidays, there's so much stress. And the problem is some of the stress gets magnified because it's stress that you can't really admit or talk about. Sometimes, especially for adults, going back home.
Oh, yeah.
Like just the saying that sounds stressful. And then you see people that you used to be friends with and now you're just like, hi, how you doing? And so, but it's like this stress veiled with a smile because you have to be happy. It's the holidays. You're home with your family. You're supposed to be, just the happiest time of the year. And yet secretly you might be a little bit miserable in some parts of your heart and soul. And so it's not only the stress, but it's, you're not admitting it and owning up to it. You're kind of veiling it. And so then you wind up being like, well, no, I had a great time over Christmas. I ate a few carbs, but, and you don't, you're not being honest with yourself. No, you had a crappy time over the holidays. You were around a bunch of people that you maybe would rather have just said hi to on the phone. And so, yeah, your cortisol level was sky high for the whole week there, maybe 2 weeks,
maybe a month or two.
But, and so, yeah. And so that kind of stuff, that's going to stall any kind of progress towards many health goals, whether it's reversing your type 2 diabetes, reversing your hypertension, or losing weight. All those things are going to slow down when that cortisol level spikes because your body doesn't know why you're mentally perturbed and upset. It doesn't know that if you're in a tree surrounded by hyenas or if you're just in the house with your in-laws for the next 2 weeks. It can't tell. All it knows is you're upset about something. And so in order to help you cope with that, your body very helpfully raises your cortisol level, which then turns off weight loss and starts a cascade of biochemical events that leads to the conversation that Kim and I are now having.
So what happens, like physiologically, when we get stressed out? Maybe after that we'll talk about some coping mechanisms. But first, tell me, like, what happens inside the body, and then what does that do?
Yeah. So we have this thing, and everybody misnames it. They call it the fight or flight response. And it's really the freeze fight or flight response. Though that's the three normal things that a human does when they're presented with a danger. Freeze, fight, or flight, or run. That's what you do. And so we think that ancestrally, 10, 20, 30,000 years ago, we weren't just in the pressure cooker that we are many times today. Every now and then, a saber-tooth would chase you, or somebody would try to stab you, or you would have to jump off a mountain into a rushing river. Things happened that back then, but it wasn't a constant daily chronic anxiety, stressful situation like we often find ourselves in today. And in order to help you escape the saber-tooth or to successfully stab the guy trying to kill you 20,000 years ago, your body raised your cortisol level, it raised your blood sugar, and it raised your adrenaline level, right? And so that gave you the immediate energy, strength, and speed to dispatch whatever was trying to terminate you back then, eat you, or if you were trying to eat it, it helped you win. But in our current situation, we're under chronic stress. Right. And so when your adrenaline's chronically high and your cortisol's chronically high and your blood sugar's chronically high, trying to fight this saber-toothed tiger that's not there on a daily, day after day basis, that can lead to metabolic problems. And that can lead to the complete stalling of any kind of weight loss. That can lead to your blood sugar starting to go up again, to your A1C starting to go up. It can lead to you starting to hold fluid again and your blood pressure going up. All these things can happen from that chronic bad stress.
Yeah. So I see this a lot with very upset people, maybe in one of my coaching groups who say, why is my blood sugar going up? I have this a lot in December, and they're like, I'm carnivore. Why is this happening? And, I had to point out that stress really affects your blood sugar.
Yes. Absolutely.
Why is that?
Big time. Yeah. It's because of the elevated cortisol. And then there's no doubt about it. We can run on ketones and fatty acids, but the quickest energy is the blood sugar. And so when your body raises your adrenaline levels and your cortisol levels, your liver's going to say, oh man, we must be in trouble. We probably need more blood sugar. We need more glucose in circulation so that we can make those quick decisions and make those quick muscular movements to climb the tree or jump in the river or do whatever needs to be done. And that's a great strategy for occasional severe stressful events. Mm-hmm. But it turns out to be kind of a disevolutionary response to our modern chronic, everyday stress lifestyle. And so that can raise your blood sugar. And if that happens once every 3 months, when somebody tried to mug you and you had to kick their butt, that's fine. That's normal. That's good. But if it happens every single day because you've got a boss or you've got a neighbor or you've got an in-law or you've got a spouse whose butt you'd like to kick every single day, then that can lead to chronically high blood sugar, chronically high cortisol levels.
Absolutely. What happens in the body other than the high blood sugar, or maybe because of the high blood sugar? We got some friends watching. Richard's watching and Carrie's watching. Travis is watching. Hey,
I saw
Travis.
that.
So you're in this state, your cortisol is elevated, your blood glucose is going up. What is happening to your body? Like, what are the downstream effects?
So the downstream effects is if you're trying to lose weight, that's going to slow down. Because that's one of the ways that we know that we lose weight is to keep our insulin levels really, really low. And when your blood sugar goes up for any reason, then your pancreas is immediately going to start to secrete more insulin, because that's one of the things your body does not want is you to have hyperglycemia or high blood sugar. And so your pancreas immediately ramps up insulin production, which is going to turn off any fat burning that may have been happening. It's also going to make you hold more fluid, right? And so that if you used to have swollen ankles and they got better for a while and now you're under a ton of stress because you're stuck at your in-laws' house, those swollen ankles may come back, and you may blame it on the plane ride or the long car ride, and that may have something to do with it. But it could also be from the cortisol insulin axis induced edema as well. You'll notice the blood pressure starts to go back up. You'll notice your anxiety starts to get worse, because when you're chronically secreting cortisol and adrenaline, you're it's kind of fight or flight, and you're kind of half irritated. You don't know whether to yell at somebody or go to the bedroom and pretend you've got a migraine. And, we just do the best we can, but hundreds of things are happening in the wrong direction inside your body when those things are not where they need to be.
So what do we do? Like, maybe let's talk about some coping strategies. So we're in this life, like we can't quit our job. We can't get a divorce. We can't kill our in-laws. None of these things are not available for us. What do you do? What are the attempts you make to fix the situation?
I think the very first step that needs to occur is that you need to be honest with yourself and say, I'm having these feelings, and it does not make me a bad spouse. It does not make me a bad in-law. It does not make me a bad employee or employer that I currently want to kill this person. People, we have those feelings. We're human. And so trying not to stuff it, as we say, or trying not to ignore it, I think that's huge, because then you'll never find a solution to a problem if you stuff it and don't admit it exists. You'll never find the answer or the solution or the path out of that. But if you own up to it, and it can be just you in front of the mirror saying, yeah, okay, I would love to strangle my husband or whoever, and then say, okay, great. All right. Got that. Now what are we going to do about that? And that's when you can start having a productive discussion with yourself, or perhaps with other humans, about the plan of escape, so to speak. And that doesn't mean you're going to file for divorce or quit your job. It just means, how am I going to improve this situation so that it becomes tolerable?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a super important point that we sometimes forget. There's primary stress and then there's secondary stress, right? Like the primary stress is this situation, but we exponentially multiply it because then we obsess and we blame ourselves and we beat ourselves up. And so now we're just like compounding the stress. Whereas if you just dealt with the original source of the stress, or was just honest about that to yourself, it's a very different level.
Yeah. For years, I was a runner and a stuffer and a hider, and I would ignore and no, that's fine. There's no problem there. And that stuff just it magnifies every problem. It turns every tiny little issue into a big deal. And so I have rewired that, and I don't do that anymore. I try to face problems just literally head on. The instant that I see there's a problem, that's when I start trying to find a solution. But yeah, we magnify our own stress so many times, and magnify it by magnitudes and make it much, much worse, just because we're afraid to face it, afraid to admit that it exists, or afraid to say, gosh, I don't know how to fix that. Right. And sometimes just that realization that I don't know how I'm going to fix this, but I'm going to fix it somehow, that's a great first step. And often you can take a big sigh of relief and almost feel your cortisol drop a notch when you just have that honest conversation with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really, really important. I think that there are exceptions to this, but I think a lot of us who became overweight in some point in our past might have a tendency to be stuffers, literally and figuratively, because often we will allow ourselves food as what we would call self-care, right? But it's the only one we allow ourselves, and we do it in such a way that it shouldn't be called self-care. It should be called self-abuse. Right. But
mal care, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, but I know, a lot of women, men too, obviously, but my experience with women is that they'll go out to eat with a friend to deal with stress, or I'll treat myself. It's a hard week, a hard day, a hard afternoon. And that is what you're doing instead of doing something that's actually good for yourself, actually helps you deal with the stress properly. Because that food will increase certain feel-good hormones very short term, and that's not going to help long term.
Yeah, And typically when you're attempting to perform self-care with food, it's very, very common that you make inappropriate food choices.
Yeah.
Because what you're really looking for is you're looking for a hit of dopamine because you're feeling crappy and crummy and nothing's going right and you got this situation you don't know what to do with. And so a hit of dopamine, you can get that from a jelly donut. You can get a much bigger hit from, smoking some cocaine, crack or snorting a lot of cocaine. But you can also get that from a jelly donut. And so it's really, you don't get much dopamine from eating a ribeye. You just get nutrition. And so that's why, and some of you watching may go, yeah, anytime I'm really upset, I never be like, you know what, damn it, I'm going to eat 2 ribeyes. You don't ever say that, right? Because ribeyes are nutrition. That's food. What you're looking for is the dopamine from that sugar slam. And so you wind up eating something that just screws your diet for a few days, looking for that good feeling dopamine rush. And it never works out in the long run because now you just made a new problem.
Right. Absolutely. And now you're going to even apart from the now I feel bad mentally that I've eaten this thing. Now you're cruising for a bruising because you're about to have the responding, dip in energy. So you get that cortisol, you get that dopamine high and then the blood sugar goes up and then it's like you're on the top of that roller coaster and you're headed for the whoop-de-doo and it's not going to go well for you.
Yeah. And then 2 hours later, all the dopamine's gone and your blood sugar's crashing and then you feel like even worse crap
than you did before.
Than you did before you ate. Then you ate it.
Yeah. So
yep, that happens.
Welcome to my 30s.
You're welcome to my 30s. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And that's exactly what I was doing when I was 297 pounds. I was stuck in a situation that I wasn't happy with and was miserable. And I drank, Dutch chocolate milk and crumbled up powdered donuts in there. And that's what I would eat.
And
that made me feel better for a minute.
Yeah. That is interesting. Okay. A couple of questions just came in and they're great questions, people. I love that you're asking them, but we're going to finish this topic and I may forget your question. So if I don't answer it, ask it again. When I say, do you have any questions? We'll open up the floor. So what are some things, so dealing with how you're feeling is the number one way to deal with your stress. But what are some other things that people can do that might lower their cortisol?
Yeah. So physical activity is a great thing. Go for a walk. Get out of the house because usually that is the pressure cooker, whichever house you happen to be in. Get your shoes on and unless it's 28 degrees, go for a walk and just get out in nature, look at the blue sky, look at the green trees if there is any green where you live at the moment. Or look at the white snow or listen to the dog bark, but just basically get out in nature. We're kind of meant to spend a lot of time in nature and we don't do that anymore. If it's warm enough, take your shoes and socks off and walk around barefoot on the ground. For a lot of people, that has almost a magical effect on how they feel. I do that sometimes and it just relaxes me. I'm like, and I don't know exactly why. I don't know if there's some physiological thing or if that's just a trick I'm playing on myself, but it sure makes me feel better to walk around barefooted in the grass. Probably not the snow, but yeah. And so that's one that works great for me is just to get outdoors for a few minutes. What are a couple you do, Kim?
Well, I also think a walk really helps, but it's really important that I walk at the pace that my body feels not challenged by, right? Like, cause there's a difference between walking at a pace where you're like, I'm getting in a really good workout. And then there's the like pace where you're like, sort of, you can imagine, this is going to be strange. You can imagine you're like a dog and you're like sniffing the trees and you're like going over here and you're doing this thing. Like you're doing it just for your own enjoyment. But you're getting the blood pumping. I like to listen to music.
Cause, what we're talking about here is not walking for exercise. Cause, sometimes you need to go for a walk. And sometimes you need to go for a walk, right? And we're not talking about exercising. We're talking about this is a stress reliever. Yeah, exactly.
And then, there are some things that are also very helpful, like meditation. I have on my phone an app called, I think it's called Calm. And it's got like recordings of like babbling brooks and, there are also guided meditations, but sometimes I just turn on the like, ocean sound and just sit for a while with my eyes closed, listening to the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah. And Nisha has that app. She loves that. And sometimes if I really get on her nerves, she'll have her earbuds in listening to the Calm.
Yes. Be calm around Dr. B.
Yeah.
And then, going for a drive. If you like driving, sometimes I have been known to go for a 2-hour completely useless drive. I've also gone to a yoga class, but one of the like restorative yoga classes where basically they lay you on pillows and have you just sit there. That's nice. Or I've also, talked to a friend, like a friend that isn't, you have those friends that are challenging friends. And then you have the friends where like everything, they'll just listen to you. Call the friend who will just listen to you.
You need that friend. That's right.
That friend.
Yeah. And another great thing that Nisha does to de-stress is she uses her essential oils. And she has a few blends and like literally I can take a whiff of the rollerball in her purse and I'm like, okay, all right, we can handle this.
There are certain smells that are very relaxing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So one of the things that a lot of us need to do when we go keto that we haven't done at any point yet in our lives are develop some stress coping mechanisms that don't involve a drive-through.
Yeah. That's right. That don't involve stuffing your face.
And so if this is has been your first holiday season or your first promotion or your first firing or your first anything stressful since you went keto, be aware your tool bag may be a little undersupplied.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And if this has been your first attempt at a keto Christmas and it didn't go well, that's okay. That was just a learning experience. Now, this was just practice for next year. That's all this was.
Yeah, absolutely. You focusing on something that's gone wrong, unless you're focusing on it just to fix it, that's the only time it's okay. You're allowed to look behind you
that's right.
to make a better path forward. You're not allowed to look behind you to beat yourself up.
That's right. And I've talked to Kim about this before, and I'm going to say that potentially inflammatory thing, Kim. Some people get offended by this, but it seems to work very well for people who can hear it. And if you can't hear it, if you just get mad at me, then that's okay. I still love you. But but very commonly women will worry and fuss and fret and just can't let something go. And so in the clinic, I started talking to women. And I would say, what you've got to do is you've got to think more like a man. And that immediately wakes them up there because they're pissed off at a man. That's why they're having this problem anyway. And they're like, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, okay, your husband, if he can fix something, what does he do? Well, he fixes it. Okay. If he can't fix it, what's he do? He ignores it. That's exactly right. And I'm like, do you think you could be a little more like that? No, I don't want you to be like him. I just want you to be a little more like that. If you can fix it, then ball up on it and fix it. But if you cannot fix it, do you think you could ignore it or just pretend it's not there or just pray about it, give it to God, give it to somebody and just let it go? Could you do that? And it's the most interesting thing to watch their face as they try to imagine themselves. Can I even do that? And so I think that would be an excellent strategy and everybody will have to come at that differently. Some people won't be able to do that at all. But if you can imagine a way where you can just fix the things you can fix. And then if it's literally beyond your fixing, you got to figure out a strategy at that point where you're like, yeah, I can't fix this. You got to figure out now what am I going to do? Because worrying and crying and fussing and that, none of that's going to help you. And it's also not going to help the problem. So if you could figure out a way to think a little more like that might make life much easier because then you would get everything fixed that you could fix and you wouldn't worry about the stuff you couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like.
Who did I make mad? Put it in the comments. If
so far people are thumbs up on Apparently I attract the women
Okay.
who are
Okay.
not
All right.
easily offended. I think it's just generally good advice. You know, I think there are good reasons that women tend to be the way we are. I think it lends itself to a lot of benefit, but there are pitfalls, and this is one of them.
Yes, that's right. I totally agree with that, because in many family and social situations, that is a great strategy. But then in other situations, it is a suicidal moth around the flame strategy that will spend your entire life getting nothing done.
Yeah, absolutely. That was also my 30s.
yeah.
All right.
There you go.
So, great. I feel like, is there anything we want to add about stress? Cortisol?
Either fix it or ignore it. That's it.
Right. Fix it, ignore it.
Admit it, go for a walk, go for a drive, lay on some pillows, and then either fix it or ignore it. And by ignore it, I don't mean truly ignore it. I mean, in whatever way you have to de-internalize it and give it to whomever. You can give it to the universe, you can give it to God, you can just give it to the devil, whatever you have to do as a mental strategy to get it off your chest, off your heart, off your mind.
And
because if
I was going to say, I think that what I kind of look at it as is more like, can I do anything about it right now? Can I affect this right now? If the answer is no, I'm not saying I will never deal with this topic. It's going in the vault and I'm locking the door. But I'm going to say, I'm going to put this aside and I'm going to pick it back up when I have the tools I need to fix it.
Right. That's another very classical male kind of thing. I can't do anything about that tomorrow, so I'll think about that tomorrow. And some people can't do that yet, but you can learn how to do that. And it's a very powerful strategy for sleeping very soundly. And you may have, if most of the women can remember an episode where they were sitting up all night worrying about something and he's over there snoring. That's what he did. He literally in his head said, I can't fix that till tomorrow. Therefore I'm going to bed. That's it. And that's what he did. And so that's a very powerful strategy of keeping a very low cortisol level. If you can figure out a strategy that you can use to develop that mentality.
Right. A strategy I might add to that is, because some of us need like a interim strategy, is you can keep a pad of paper by your bed and you can title it Things I'm Putting Down for the Night. And just write down
that's good.
whatever it is, because then you can tell yourself, I'm picking this back up in the morning. My central nervous system can relax because I'm not forgetting about it, but I'm going to write it down here and I'm going to pick it up tomorrow.
Yes, that's very good. Yes, very good. And another great thing is to have is if you can come up with a plan, write that plan down. Okay, tomorrow, first, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this. And if you need to, write that down. Right. And then when you're trying to drift off to sleep and you start to worry about it, be like, no, I got a plan. I already wrote it down. The plan is in place. I am working the plan because part of the plan is for me to get a good night's sleep so that I can work the rest of the plan tomorrow.
Right. Absolutely. And this is something I often do. And sometimes I am this person, but we all have a problem-solving friend. A friend that is good at talking problems through. Maybe not when you're really upset, but you can, if you're upset about something and you're like, I got to deal with this thing, you can text them and say, in a few days, can we talk about X, Y, and Z because I could use your help? And then you're like, I'm not going to think about it until that conversation, but I'm putting it down until then.
Yeah. That's good. I like that too, and you have to word it that way because that friend will want to start fixing it right now. And you preface with in 2 days. Yeah, because I'm not ready to work on this. I'm still pissed off about it right now. But in 2 days, we're going to talk about how to fix this. Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Some tips. We're all about practical.
Heck yeah.
So I'm going to open it up to some questions so that we can answer some. I'm going to start with one because I have a follow-up. remember last week we talked about the Saxenda and the friend who had a high A1C, and so she got her A1C back, and on 2 months of keto, her A1C hadn't gone down, which is interesting. And I have some suspicion that some of that was a little dirty keto. So she's
certainly.
So she's now doing carnivore and taking metformin that her doctor had prescribed. She's on day 3 of metformin and carnivore, and her blood glucose is 55. And now she's like, now my blood glucose is too low. I asked her if she felt okay. Yeah. She felt a little not great. So what's happening there? What's going on?
So that pretty much proves your hypothesis from a second ago that her keto was dirty keto or keto-ish, because it's kind of hard to play reindeer games if you're just eating meat. It's either meat or it ain't meat, and meat don't have no carbs. And so that's one of the beautiful things about the carnivore diet, even if you just do it for a month or 2 months, is you understand I have been eating very ultra low carb. There's no way around that unless you're squirting some Heinz ketchup on your ribeye, which is obviously not keto. Then you just know you're cheating at that point. There's no way you can kind of tiptoe, well, I don't know, it was probably fine. You either ate meat or you didn't eat meat. And so I think that's exactly what that's probably already shown her, is that her keto was pretty dirty. And when you eat fatty meat only and nothing else, it has that very quick effect on your blood sugar.
Yeah. Now, she also started metformin 3 days ago. Does it happen that sometimes metformin can make you a little bit hypoglycemic?
Very rarely. It doesn't work like the other ones do. It doesn't work by elevating your insulin, so it really won't bottom out your blood sugar. Now, it may make it low. You may be in the high 50s, but it's never going to make you bottom out to the point where you'll need to, initiate emergency help. But she might even, if she's committed to carnivore for a while, she could probably talk to her doctor about just stopping the metformin and just say, look, doc, if my blood sugar starts to go up, I'll start it again. But otherwise, I'm going to be trying this experiment, and I want to just stop that and get her doctor's blessing to do that.
Okay. Sounds good. She wasn't feeling so great. So when you have somebody that's carnivore, by the way, I'm going to stop for a second and say, I'm not a doctor. He is not your doctor. So nothing we are talking about here is medical advice. We're shooting the breeze about somebody we know. So do you find, what do you do? What if you go carnivore? So you only really are eating meat and animal related products, and then your blood sugar is a little low, and you eat a steak and it goes up not at all. And you're like, I kind of feel like I need higher blood sugar right now. What do you do?
Mm-hmm. So if someone has been a pre-diabetic or a type 2 diabetic, their body is used to higher blood sugars. It's used to functioning with a blood sugar of 150, 200, 250, God forbid, higher. And I have many diabetics who, when they go keto or go carnivore, they'll say, my blood sugar's too low. I feel miserable. And I'm like, well, what was your blood sugar? 79. And they're not joking. They really do feel miserable because they're not used to that. And I tell them it's not dangerous. As long as it's above 55 or 60, you're perfectly safe, but you're going to feel like crap for a few days until your body remembers how to burn ketones and fatty acids, and until your body realizes, oh, I don't need all that blood sugar anymore. You're going to feel rough for a few days. And that's very common when a type 2 diabetic is starting to eat proper food again. And it's almost like an alcoholic coming off, the vodka. You're going to feel crappy for a few days, but that doesn't mean you should go back on the vodka or back on the carbs. It means you should persist for the benefit that you're going to get at the end of the journey. But yeah, it's very common to feel bad with that low blood sugar and think you need to do something to raise it. You don't. You just need to be patient. And in a day or two, you'll feel fine with that blood sugar of 60.
Yeah. I think one of the things we run into a lot, or certainly I do in keto groups, is people have been told for a long time, especially people that have a history of type 2 diabetes, that when their blood sugar is low, it's dangerous. And it can be in a SAD diet spectrum. right? Because you're not making ketones,
Right.
but when usually on keto, when you have very low blood sugar, your ketones are going to go up, right? And you're a hybrid vehicle now.
Right. Exactly. But if your blood sugar gets below 55 or 60, you may need to do something about that. But I'm talking about the person whose blood sugar is 65 or 75 and they feel terrible, that they're having literal hypoglycemic symptoms. They're nauseated, they're sweaty, and that can happen for a few days when you get the carbs out of your diet. But if you're feeling like that, check your blood sugar. If it's 65, you're in no danger. You're going to feel like crap like that for a few days. Eating carbs will make you feel immediately better, but that's not the long-term solution that you're looking for. Because just as Kim said, as you go down this path, your body's going to become more and more adapted to burning ketones and fatty acids for fuel, and you just won't need that blood sugar anymore.
Yeah. So you don't think people should worry if they're in the 50s or 60s and they just feel a little off, but within a range of tolerance, like they don't feel like they're dying.
Right. Because really there's nothing that's going to, for a type 2 diabetic, the only thing that's going to make your blood sugar bottom out is your medicine.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of people don't realize that if you're on glyburide or glimepiride or insulin injections or some of the others that work by raising your insulin level, then you are at risk of having a low blood sugar. But if all you're on is metformin, then you're almost certainly not going to have a dangerous episode of hypoglycemia. It's just almost impossible at that point. And then as each day goes by and you do another day of keto, the risk of hypoglycemia just becomes astronomically small, because the thing that was giving you those highs and lows before was the medication that you were taking that you're now not taking anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, great. So I had a question come in about carb cycling. I tend to have two categories, although you could call it three. There are kind of three main categories of keto, in my opinion. There's therapeutic ketosis, which is for people looking to treat things like neurological diseases, epilepsy, cancer, certain types of cancer. So they're like therapeutic. There's standard keto, which is most of us. And then what I like to call sporty keto. And the sporty keto involves maybe some more reindeer games with your ketosis and doing some different things. But to play in sporty keto, you actually have to be sporty. That is a key point.
Yeah.
So whether or not, now carb cycling, I have some issues with in general. There's something called targeted ketogenic diets where you're very specifically, scientifically targeting some easily digestible carbohydrates around your workout. I'm willing to discuss that might be a beneficial idea in certain things. But really, honestly, when most people say carb cycling, they mean Krispy Kreme cycling.
Or pasta cycling, yeah.
And that I'm not down for. And really, this isn't a topic of discussion that you should be engaging in if you're not sporting keto. Dr. Berry?
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think so. I don't really believe that anybody needs to carb cycle. I don't believe that the thyroid issue. There's no research. I can't find any physiological reason why somebody with Hashimoto's or hypothyroid would ever need to carb cycle. But if you're going to carb cycle, if that's something you're going to do, then let's be honest here. You can carb cycle. You can eat 100 grams of carbs a day, and all those carbs be keto approved carbs.
You'd be eating a fair amount of food there, but yes.
You'd be eating a lot of food, but if you wanted to do that, you could do that. You do not have to eat pasta or grains or sugars or desserts or any of that crap to carb cycle. And so if you're doing that, then you're just cheating on keto. And that means that you don't really want the benefits that keto has to offer you. But if you're truly thinking if you believe in carb cycling, then you just get out the broccoli and the blueberries and you just carb cycle and just try that for a while. I find that most people who profess belief in carb cycling are very young and typically pretty metabolically healthy. most older folks and people who have lots of weight to lose, they quickly realize that doesn't help them one bit, and they stop doing that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I really do think that the carb cycling idea, for the most part, is rooted in the idea of cheating. It's just sort of a fancy name for it. And
maybe, yeah.
And then I do think there are people legitimately who are like experimental and they want to, try and dial things. And I'm not saying that people who want to carb cycle are bad people, but I think that, it more often than not, it leads to people falling off the keto wagon and, really struggling.
Oh, yeah.
And then, if you look at the study that doctors, Lowry and Wilson did that is in the Keto Bible, they looked at two groups. One carb cycled every week and one did not. So both groups ate keto, and then one group was all week and one group took 1 or 2 days off a week to carb cycle. At the end of the test, both groups had lost a similar amount of body weight, but the carb cycling group had lost quite a considerable amount of lean body mass. Because keto, muscle. You don't want that, people. Yeah. You really don't. It really screws with your metabolism in a bad way. And so I have concerns, even if people are doing it for really, well-meaning reasons. I want you to keep your lean body mass, people. Keep the muscle that you have.
Absolutely.
And so that study really made me very concerned about carb cycling.
Totally agree. And I just don't think it's a thing that people need to do. Is it a thing some people want to do? Yeah. But I think that's probably just because of where you are on your keto journey. Once you get to a certain point, you won't have any desire to do that anymore.
The other day I had a bite of cauliflower, which I used to love. And I was like, why do I like this? It's not coming to me. I literally just spit it out.
Yep.
I was like, no.
Yep. Yeah, and carnivore, man, that is hardcore. Will get you off your carb addictions. And I was talking to a patient today who had traveled to see me, and I said, used to my favorite thing in the world was hot fudge cake from Sonic. They don't have them anymore, but they used to have a hot fudge cake. Dude, I would stab somebody for one back in the day, right? But I said, literally, carnivore has got me to the point where if you put the most succulent, delicious, fresh, hot fudge cake right here, I'd be like, nope, I don't even give a damn. I don't even want to smell it. Not that I'm afraid of it. I'm just literally uninterested. I have no interest in it whatsoever. It doesn't appeal to me anymore. And so you're right. The carnivore diet, man, it'll make you look at carbs in a whole new light. You're just like, that ain't
it's interesting. I mean, keto can look like a lot of things, people. Just because Dr. B and I are short on the veggies doesn't mean you have to be. It's what works for you guys, but I am really interested to see the trend that's happening among the keto sort of experts and teachers. They're really, if they're not carnivore, they're carnivore adjacent. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting, and I think it may be quite telling. Because basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to rediscover the proper human diet. It's what we're trying to do, and we started with primal and paleo and ancestral, and we just and then we're coming to low carb, then we're coming to keto. And it looks like many people kind of land on either carnivore or fatty meat heavy keto as the diet where they feel and look the best. And I find that very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jimmy Moore right now is doing, or maybe he stopped, but he was for January doing basically carnivore, I think fully carnivore, and I
hope he doesn't stop. I hope he does not stop.
Had some awesome success. And I think that for many of us, it really, it's hard to get over feeling good, right? You don't want to stop feeling good. So that's, really awesome. Someone just asked, which is better for weight loss? My honest answer, keto or carnivore? My honest answer is the one that you will do. is better for weight loss.
Yeah.
I have better weight loss on carnivore than I do on keto. However, I had great weight loss for a good year on keto. And I think if you haven't yet started either one, I find keto an easier transition. And then you can kind of go from there.
Yeah. And I'm glad that I came through keto to find carnivore. I think that was the proper way to do it because I think I learned a lot about myself and my diet and my body during that process. And that's what I want everyone else to do. I want you to learn about yourself, learn how you react to this, that, and the other. Should you eat that? Should you avoid this? The only way to know is to try these little experiments that we do, and then you'll know. And then you can write that down in your little book and you will never forget it. But, I don't see in the foreseeable future, Kim, that I'll go back to keto. If I ever change from carnivore, it'll be back to keto. It won't be to anything else. But I mean, I don't know why I would. I keep, I'm checking my labs every 6 months. I'm taking monthly pictures as I work out and posting them on my Facebook page. So I'm looking at this going, okay, why should I stop this? I feel better. I look better. I'm getting stronger. My numbers are fine. So why should I stop this? And so, I think for some people, a carnivore diet is the proper diet for them. And for other people, I think probably they need some veg. But nobody needs pasta.
Nobody.
Or hot fudge cake.
Sadly, no. So somebody just asked, are we now advocating carnivore? I am advocating the approach to eating that makes you feel good and feel successful and gives you good health. And so whatever that looks like, if that's the vegan diet, although I don't know why that would do that, but whatever the diet is that would work for you, I am just telling people that I think the keto umbrella is probably the way to go for most of us, certainly if we have any degree of insulin resistance in our past. Yep. And then carnivore is just a way of doing keto, in my opinion.
Exactly. Right. And a lot of people don't get that. They think, oh, you're doing some different diet now. And I'm like, no, I believe that the carnivore diet is a subset of the ketogenic way of eating. It's just instead of low carb, it's essentially zero carb. It's ultra low carb is all it is. And so it's not a different diet. I'm not against keto. I love keto. But my keto is carnivore. Whereas your keto may be lots of dark green veg and just a little bit of meat. That may be your keto where you feel the best. You gotta figure out where you fall on that keto spectrum.
Right, absolutely. Travis, who's on the stream, runs a group, called the World Carnivore Tribe, I think. So if you're looking for a place to ask your questions about carnivore specifically, you can go there and check it out.
It's a great group.
They're a little, it's always funny when you have a group run by a bunch of carnivores. They're very meaty.
Well, I was going to say, you expect that. They're carnivores. They're going to be a little snappy. So you can't go in there asking a lot of stupid questions or you'll get your hand bitten. Yeah, they got teeth. Yeah.
But okay, so somebody just asked about obstructive sleep apnea and keto. And certainly I see a lot of sleep apnea improving on keto. Do you see that, and why?
Absolutely. So obstructive sleep apnea is the first word is obstructed. What is obstructing? Soft tissue, right? Which is fat. And so, or just the plethora of tissue you get around this area when you're overweight. And so I don't know the exact percentage, but like 80 or 90% of people, if they lose enough weight, they will reverse or cure their sleep apnea. And so I tell people that a lot. I'm like, do you love your CPAP machine? Because if you don't, you need to eat keto. Then you can sell that damn thing on eBay one of these days. But there's a very small percentage of people that no matter how skinny they got, they would still have obstructive sleep apnea. And it's not the obesity. It's just some other anatomical defect. And I
know some skinny people with sleep apnea. Yeah.
Yep. It happens, but it's pretty rare. But I'd say 9 out of 10 people with sleep apnea, if they're overweight, if they get closer to their ideal body weight, the sleep apnea will just go away. And so, yeah, I've seen that multiple times at the clinic.
Right. So we've had a question about constipation in carnivore. And I would say that this question comes up because people are under the erroneous assumption that fiber is what makes you poop. And,
right. So it's time to talk about
we've come to that time, Dr. Ken. And I will say that
put the children to bed.
I will say from everyone I've ever discussed this with that people's digestion in terms of pooping is so much better when they go carnivore.
Yeah.
Dr. Georgia Eads has a talk about fiber where there's a study, and Paul Mason shows the same results in one of his talks on just YouTube, and about how quite a few people, when they go on zero fiber diets, their digestion improves by leaps and bounds and their constipation is gone.
Yeah. And we're not talking about just people with bloating or little constipation or gas. We're talking about people with Crohn's and irritable bowel disease and ulcerative colitis. These people sometimes carnivore is almost magical for them. And so if you have UC or IBS or Crohn's, should you try a month of carnivore? Hell yes. What's the worst thing that could happen? You could have a flare up. Well, you have those 3 or 4 times a year anyway, right? So why not try this 1 month experiment and just see what happens with your bowel disease? But the main question I get is, I've been eating carnivore and I think I'm constipated because I don't poop much. And so then we have to have the conversation about what is constipation. And constipation has a list of symptoms that's how you diagnose it. You have rectal pain. You have to strain in order to poop. You have pain. You have abdominal bloating. You have cramping. You can even have bleeding. Those are the definition of what constipation is. Constipation is just not the absence of needing to poop. That's not constipation. That's good. You can go work on that problem you didn't know how to fix because you don't have to go poop. And so it's very common because what's happening is when you eat meat is pure nutrition. You digest virtually all of it. And so, back when you were eating the standard American diet and 6 to 11 servings of whole grains a day, you pooped 3 times a day and you pooped like a champ 3 times a day. And it was big poop because you had all that undigestible crap that you couldn't use. It was useless to you. So you had to poop
Bulk
it out.
Is not your friend.
Right. And so, I think it was maybe Paul Mason, he showed the big traffic jam. And he said, if the goal is to get a lot of stuff out of this tiny hole, why would you put more stuff in there to get that doesn't make any sense, right? And so when you eat just meat, you absorb all that. And so you make very little poop. And it's very common for a carnivore to have a little poop every other day. That's very common. And you won't poop every day. You might, but you might not. But that twice or 3 times a day and you made it was a big deal when you pooped, that goes, you don't do that on carnivore because you absorb all that nutrition.
Right. So, that's very helpful for people. I think the one thing I will tell people is anytime you go through a diet change, your digestion may be confused. So always give yourself a good month to adjust to your microbiome, your gut biome is going to be based on what you've been eating up till now. So you've got to give yourself some transition time. So if you get constipated, some magnesium can be helpful. If you're running to the bathroom all the time, try some bone broth. There are some things you can do to help a little bit, but mostly you got to kind of ride it out. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. But just remember, just because you haven't pooped in a while, if your belly feels fine and you feel fine and you're not having cramping, pain, or bleeding, that's not constipation. You just don't need to poop.
Right. Somebody just recommended tracking with Carb Manager. I would like to put in a word that I like to track with Chronometer, not Carb Manager, because I think it's better. So just putting in a good word. If you track, use Chronometer. If you're carnivore, you probably don't need to track. The reason that you don't need to track is you're not going to get into a lot of problems. as long as when you first start carnivore, all your meat should be kind of fatty. Don't go lean meat, go fatty meat.
Right. That's right. No chicken breast.
So eat fatty meat when you're hungry. Don't eat anything when you're not hungry. Rinse and repeat.
The end. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, it's very simple.
Right. Okay, I think we've come to the end of the hour. So,
excellent.
I see people asking, they're very concerned about protein. We will do a talk about protein maybe in the future. And
we could do that next week if you want to talk about why protein doesn't matter.
The way they think it does.
We can talk about that.
Okay.
Right, exactly.
All right, people. Have a good night. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us on Keto Life Support. If you'd like more, you can join our friendly Facebook group, Keto Life Support. Can't find it? Go to ketolifesupport.com. If you ever want to suggest a topic for discussion, that would be the place to do it. We'd really, really appreciate it if you would go to your podcast app and subscribe, because that's awesome. And what would be super awesome is if you'd be so kind as to write a review for us. Though we would love it if that review was awesome, just writing a review is all we ask. So have a fabulous keto week, and we'll see you next time.